proves we can't ever really know what's going on.
Appearances can be deceptive.
Jesus, Tom, I was just speculating about a hypothesis. I know I don't know nothing.
Uncertainty. That is appropriate for matters of this world.
There, we're in a tight spot.
Hello, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as usual, is John Bernard.
Boy, howdy, sure am. Oh, hey, how you doing, Mr. Schwartz? What's happening?
What's happening is that it's everybody's favorite time of year. It's HUDSUCKER time. It's
Everyone's
HUDSUCKER
favorite.
season. Yeah. We're talking about the HUDSUCKER PROXY, the Coen brothers. Let's call it fifth film roundabouts. One of the, I guess their earliest sort of Miller's Crossing was a pretty big failure financially, I suppose.
I think the prices were such on Miller's Crossing, and it was well received critically, et cetera, et cetera. It did not stop any momentum in the way this had the potential to.
Yeah, well, the price on this is just outrageous. I think it was something like $25 million in the early 90s.
Looks like
probably
it.
like twice that now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can definitely see it, but I don't know. I guess with the clarity of hindsight, it's easy to say these things, and I'm no box office guru, but like, I can't help but look at this and think, who on earth thought this was going to be a blockbuster?
Good question.
Has a high budget throwback comedy? Have high budget comedies ever worked without like an action element to them in terms of box office? I'm not saying that they've never worked creatively. Of course they have. But
I assume. I mean, there's been so many years of things. They haven't, in the last 15 years or something. That's why we don't make comedies at all anymore. But, stuff like Anchorman, I suppose.
Was that high budget, though? That feels kind of, they're wearing, it's a period piece, but they're wearing like drama club costumes, it feels like.
Yes, that's correct. What kind of unlocked this movie for me this time was putting it in on continuity with something like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. That it full-on satire, spoof even, of a genre. Obviously nobody's asking for a screwball comedy romance in 1991, but if you
no audience has ever asked for a screwball comedy since like 1963, like since the Beatles came around,
right?
Like,
this is a dead genre essentially, and that's they're taking great pleasure in bringing that back. I think the question of the film was for me: is this like an earnest attempt to do this, or is it a parody of that? And I think once I realized it was a parody, or decided rather that it was a parody, it kind of worked better for me. I would say it's not super clear. Even as you're watching the film, that's the case, that it's definitely a comedy.
Yeah. It's clear that's a comedy, but you're right. It's not. And you're definitely right that if you view this as a direct, just sort of riff on a Frank Capra movie, it does not work on those terms.
Right.
As a parody of one, it works better. I still wouldn't say that it works great.
I looked into this. They do not consider it a send-up. They think they're doing an earnest version of that. The Coens, that is, of a Preston Sturges Frank Capra movie. And I'm like, no.
But I don't believe that either. Like, the Coens are a case where, firsthand sources are less reliable than just our general surmise, I think. I think they very deliberately do not tell the truth about their creative processes.
True. Pointedly, in fact. The next film we do is Fargo, one of the most famous versions of that. Right. But this movie, look, they clearly love the screwball comedy. They clearly love the big talking newspaper man, and all these tropes and characterizations and performance ticks and things that you would expect to see in those. It's all heightened though to a point beyond what you would see in the screwball comedy, and whereas you think that the way to do that would be to kind of modernize it somewhat, make it a little bit more palatable for an audience that's used to, I don't know what are the popular comedies of the 80s, Chevy Chase films. This could have been a Chevy Chase film, really. I think there's a film that comes out around this time that's also trying to do a Frank Capra thing, and that's what they do. That's Hero, the Dustin Hoffman film. That's actually a failure.
Never seen that one.
Oh yeah, it doesn't work. And much worse than HUDSUCKER Proxy doesn't work. That's what they're doing, and you would think that that's the way in on this, but no, they're like, no. We're doing period appropriate. She's doing straight up Rosalind Russell. It will everyone's wearing hats, and they and they're perfect for them because they will love to make a meal for character actors to come in and do things that are sort of heightened. So that's everyone in this film, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely everybody is heightened. I think the only person who comes out of it like having really aced the assignment, though, is Charles Durning.
He's wonderul. You don't like Jennifer Jason
Very
Leigh?
small part.
Okay.
I like her pretty well, but we'll.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what order do you want to go in? We can do performance reviews across the board here, but
we're gonna. Okay. Well, I know we can start with the opening of the movie, which is I love the 1950s stylization of Art Deco New York with the models.
Oh, sure. This movie looks great.
Incredible. Looks so good.
I'm flummoxed only by the financial decision of anybody signing a check for this movie thinking it was going to create a return on the box office. Like, that's just, it seems like something no audiences have ever showed up for in droves. And particularly not once you get into the 90s. But it is good to look at now.
Mm-hmm. I get that this was also this was supposed to be their big coming out kind of movie. This was supposed to be a big success.
How? As opposed to their crime movies, those movies have genre appeal. They sometimes hit big, I guess I'm using 30 more years of proof points of yes, throwback comedies never light the box office on fire as evidence. Maybe that was a more plausible pitch in 1989 when they were shopping this around, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just flabbergasted by this. I guess this movie puts me in a capitalistic mindset. All the boardroom stuff, going, how does a Sidney Musburger ever sign off on tens of millions of dollars to make this thing?
I mean, they had heat, the Coens, at this point. They were successful indie darlings, Raising Arizona was successful for what it was, as you said, Miller's wasn't, but Barton Fink had won the Palme d'Or, although this was kind of in the process already.
Among other things.
Point. Barton Fink is like a diabolically anti-audience movie. It's for the smallest possible audience imaginable.
But as much as it's anti-audience, it's so pro-critics that it succeeded on that other front that you can see, despite not lighting the box office on fire, it didn't set a huge pile of money on fire and got them a little more critical cachet, which they already had in spades. But,
sure.
You can see how I can see how Barton Fink did not diminish their pull in the town. I would think Miller's Crossing would have been a bigger problem there because it was a big, lavish period piece that didn't make money. But
it's very different than this, though. And I guess if you have to connect this to something they've already made, it's Raising Arizona, which is their most successful financially film at this point.
Ooh, so, but that is a comparison point that does this movie no favors, as we'll get into shortly.
No. This is the evidence of what they want to do here is it's so clearly what they want is to mimic these films that they love. They have a very strong fondness for movies of this era and this type, this performance style, and they are going to lavishly bring that to the screen and just wallow in that, essentially. And it is very funny, in my opinion. I think this is a hilarious movie in a lot of ways. There are some choices here that had me cackling, and and it kind of had to realize the extent to which this is satire to really unlock them. The magical Negro in the clock tower, for one thing.
Yeah, there are amusing bits here. I think it's, like I said, this movie's really well shot. I think it's funny in fits and starts. It's just, I don't find it anywhere near as watchable as most of their work. And Raising Arizona be most particular, I suppose. This is in line with Raising Arizona and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh yeah.
And those are two of my favorite of their movies. And this is down at the bottom for me. And I think that is down to casting most of all.
Interesting. I'm a big fan of the cast of this. There's one person we'll talk about him. Let's talk about Charles Durning, though, who opens the film.
Yes.
With a wonderful sequence.
He's like basically wordless in that opening scene, but his growing glee at the prospect of suicide. It's so darkly funny and actually like just vaguely, but strangely effective, emotionally to me. Like if there were, it always makes me think there should be a special Oscar just for cameos, and he should win for this because he only has one like speaking scene later on where it's completely in the satirical mode by that point. But he's also really good there at the end.
He's fantastic. He's one of the greats, and a guy that you wish they could have worked with more. I mean, he passed away halfway through their career, of course.
Yeah.
And between this and Oh Brother, he certainly makes his mark, and I think proves really clearly that he belonged in these films. Like this, he's part of their stable for sure. Even if he doesn't appear in as much, he fits right in.
I mean, he's just a treasure and a delight whenever he pops up. But Coen brothers or not, I'm pretty sure in the aughts, I watched like a full 2 extra seasons of Rescue Me that I didn't really want to, just in the hopes that he would pop up again. Like maybe we'll get a flashback episode where you can see him as Dennis Leary's dad again.
It's the kind of actor that I feel we've lost a little bit. I mean, I guess we've still got our Brendan Gleesons running around out there. But, it used to be that Charles Durning could be the main character in your film. What a time. But he's not in this. He is in it for a couple minutes at the beginning. And yes, he has a very memorable suicide sequence jumping out of the top, what is it, the 45th or the 44th floor of the HUDSUCKER building.
Depends on whether you count the mezzanine.
It's so good. And it's sort of like right off the top, a very Sam Raimi-esque sequence, which is appropriate because this is the Sam Raimi collaboration film, as it turns out. He is the second unit director, and he wrote it with them. And,
I heard he also shot the entire like hula hoop montage, the big midpoint, short film sequence that has become a weird staple of the Coen brothers filmography here that I somehow had never realized that that's a thing that's like in all of them.
This opening too is apparently Raimi behind the camera. The suicide is. He kind of does the big movement sequences where there's a lot of energy and score edited into the thing. It's usually not really the Coens' deal. They do it when they're in Raimi mode.
Yeah, I guess they have a sort of madcap mode. You're right. It's not what they end up being known for because like Fargo, No Country, even Big Lebowski are not in this manic mode at all. Those are like as goofy as Lebowski is. It's so much more leisurely than this that it doesn't feel like they're of a piece at all, really, to me. The way this is with Raising Arizona or Oh Brother, which can be a lot more madcap.
I mean, it does feel like the two kind of voices working together. This film, this has a lot of weird Raimi supernatural shit as well. Coens have supernatural shit. This is kind of more the Raimi vibe, a little bit dumber and weirder, less symbolic and more functional narratively.
I suppose it's hard to take this literally. However, it obviously does not take place on planet Earth.
There's air quotes around everything in this film, including this suicide scene. It kind of feels like a thought that came to me multiple times during this. This is like a Mr. Show film,
yes.
The extent to which they are just mocking tropes. Sometimes at the expense of their own narrative, like some of these people are so far from planet Earth that they sort of break the reality that's been set up. The elevator operator, Buzz, would be one of those guys. And maybe kind of this suicide sequence that takes him, 45 seconds or something to fall.
And he's shooing people out of the way so he doesn't land on them as he's going down.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I'm not like going to complain that there's no like real stakes to the HUDSUCKER proxy. Like that's not the point. It doesn't matter. I just I think if it's going to be this zany and outlandish, it needs to be a lot more consistently funny, in my opinion. And also,
I think it's pretty funny. Okay.
I mean, I agree with you. I think that the best way of looking at this movie, the way that I enjoy it the most, is if the entire premise is viewed as it's a Frank Capra movie. If the Jimmy Stewart character actually is as stupid and secretly callow as the villains say he is.
Yes. Yeah.
Like he never proves the bad guys wrong.
No. He's sort of an idiot.
Not even sort of.
Not even
I mean,
sort
they're
of.
imbecile, I suppose, is the word that the movie band is about.
Yeah.
It's not just that that he's secretly smart. I mean, they do posit, I guess, what the guy in the tower, Slow Moses, I think he calls himself at one point.
It's Moses.
Says that he's like secretly wise or something. The movie never really proves him to be secretly wise. But more importantly, I think to the circle element, it never proves him to be secretly or truly virtuous.
Oh, no. Well, what he has that a Capra hero has is, a great idea. The hula hoop. Like the audience knows in advance that the hula hoop is going to be a sensation,
But, oh yeah, I
So-
suppose. But we don't know that the hula hoop is his idea until like halfway in, like right
It's
going
just
into
a
that
circle,
montage.
yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, that's the sort of American can-do spirit and gumption that a Capra hero would be in possession of. That he would have the great idea that will make millions of dollars for the industry and the board of directors, but aside from that, yes, he lacks virtually all the qualities you would see in a Jimmy Stewart role.
Yeah. Well, a good heart is the main one.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, even when he has his like 15-minute kind of turn to the dark side in the middle of the film, which doesn't really work, to be honest, it's more presented as he's an idiot than that he's actually kind of got darkness in him. He's just kind of like, everyone tells him you're in charge now. He's like, yeah, I am in charge. He's just sort of stupid. And that's why he's easily seduced.
Yes, but it's also maybe part of the reason why the trip to the dark side doesn't work that well is because he's never established as a very sympathetic character. Not to make it all like screenwriting 101 stuff, but he never saves the cat in this movie. Like, I think this is a case where he probably should. Like, he should make friends with somebody in the mailroom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his villain turn is how he steps all over Buzz, the elevator guy, but they were never actually buddies, despite him using that word.
Buzz is, you notice who played Buzz?
Yeah, it's Prez from The Wire.
Wow, very different performance. I really like this performance because it is just threatening and uncomfortable whenever he's on screen, whatever he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
And he has very different roles in different scenes, but it's always just sort of like you want to take a step back from him, even when he's just being funny.
Oh yeah, my favorite gag of the movie, I think, is he's doing his whole rhyming routine as people step on, like, Mrs. Dell, personnel, Mr. Blevin, floor 7, Mr. Klein, 9, and Mr. Blevin, 37, 36. Walk down. He gets so mad. Like, it's so close to being to making my thing work. Just take the stairs for one step for the sake of the gag.
Yeah, he kind of sucks. But everyone kind of sucks in this. It's sort of the satirical idea, I guess.
Right, but Norval sucks. Is my main contention here.
Norval does suck. Yeah,
he's a country bumpkin, but he doesn't have anything to teach the capitalist pigs. He doesn't even have anything. Like, it's weird how the Generation Lead character has an arc as though he taught her something important about the hollowness of her, urban life and go-getterness or whatever. But there's absolutely nothing. He embraces all that stuff with both arms right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get corrupted. He just becomes successful on the terms he set out to be successful on.
Yeah. He's okay. So Tim Robbins in this role.
Yes.
What do you think? Is he an everyman? He's such a galoot, which is sort of appropriate because he's a clumsy idiot in this. But they were considering Tom Cruise at one point. Apparently, that I understand. Yeah.
That would be totally wrong. I don't think Tim Robbins is totally right, but Cruise would be completely wrong because he can do naive in a way, but he can't do bumpkin. He
I kind of want to see him try, though.
yeah. He has too much. His intensity is too. I mean, he's a very urban figure, I think, and I don't know that he can be. He can't be as passive as his character needs to be. Let around because even if I don't think that the real Tom Cruise is any great intellect necessarily, and perhaps is very easily manipulated in some ways, but you have to manipulate his enthusiasm and his energy and direct it, and you can't just lead him around by the nose in the same way that Norval Barnes can be.
Sure. I mean, I think Tim Robbins is actually the guy here. I kind of think that they should have just written him as a Capra hero, though, and then Tim Robbins could have done it.
Yeah, he maybe could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, like I said, this is in a sort of tonal line with Raising Arizona or Oh Brother, and I just don't think Tim Robbins operating on the level of Nick Cage or Clooney at their best.
I would never say that, but I mean, look, this is 1994. This movie comes out. This is the same year that Shawshank Redemption comes out,
that is wild.
Arguably the best Jimmy Stewart performance anyone's given in the last 30 years, probably.
Definitely true.
Right? I mean, that's Tim Robbins nailing the assignment. And for some reason, this similar assignment kind of eludes him. And I think it's the stupidity of the character is a bit of an issue for him. He's all right.
Yeah.
He doesn't. I think he visually gets. He gets across what they need him to look like. He's that type of character quite believably. But yeah, I don't know. I think the 15 minutes of being an asshole in the middle is ill-considered in this case, unless they wanted to really play it up and make him just a profoundly stupid person.
Well, he is. Yes, I think that's exactly what it is. He is a profoundly stupid person. But I just think that, I don't know, Robbins, he's a little, I mean, saying this is the same year as Shawshank blows my mind now, realizing that, because this is a movie where he's playing a 22-year-old, and in Shawshank, it's spanning decades, but for a big bulk of that movie, he's supposed to be like 45. And he seems closer to that than this. And the other thing, I think a problem with this is he is too tall. That he has to play him as sort of a clumsy oaf because of that. But it's just, for as much as Barnes is supposed to be a puppet of all these people, he still just towers over everybody so much that it's kind of weird visually for him to be the low status person in these situations. And
I can see that
being like led around and pushed around willy nilly. And that's kind of a minor thing. And you could work around like that thematically. But I think in this broad cartoonish of a register, you kind of need everything about the character's appearance to reinforce that incredibly broad characterization. You don't have room to do any sort of dissonance or notes or nuance that way you would in a more real movie.
I think you're right, and I think this gets to the oddness of the satire in this film. Like, as much as I'm kind of like, well, once I see it as a pure comedy, a parody of these films, the more I like it. But I mean, I think this might have been what held me up for so long. This is, I think, the third time I've watched HUDSUCKER, and the first time I really would say I liked it. And I think it was just embracing it as a comedy. But, a lot of the stuff in this, I think, might be improved if it were a more serious film, or at least more, earnest in what it's going about. And yes, you're right. The art direction of Norval Barnes is actually not on point for that. And it's so on point for the rest of the film. I do like that he's kind of a Frankenstein, like he's just the monstering kind of behemoth that they got to kind of, direct around the mob chasing him at the end. Even like, get explicit. He's a creature of Sidney Musburger and HUDSUCKER and capitalism in a sense. So he is going to, he's going to run riot a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you found something interesting there, though. This being a secret satire is weird because it's not secretly a comedy. It is definitely not it's not masquerading as a real movie, like as opposed to something like Starship Troopers, for example, where that is a movie that is a secret satire, so to speak, because it is playing things kind of straight faced as an action movie, but it has this whole satirical layer to it that is pretty hilarious on its own right. This, I guess, going by the framing we're trying to put on it, it is a broad satirical comedy masquerading as a broad non-satirical comedy. Like that's a strange mask to be wearing, I suppose. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, are we just like, are we full of shit then? Is this too weird? Or I mean, it's not, because it's the Coens though.
Yeah.
I feel like they I don't know if it's intentional, I guess is my point. Like the line they had is like, well, it's a Preston Sturges protagonist and a Frank Capra plot, and I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. Based on
I like the conceptual joke. Like I said, that it's one of those movies where the protagonist actually is as crappy as the big city cigar chopping types all like assume him to be immediately. Like that he just never. He goes through the same arc as a Jimmy Stewart character without ever actually like attaining any of the moral triumphs. Just gets all the rewards with none of the triumphs.
See, it is there, right? It's like it's doing a thing, and it is kind of a little more cynical than it appears on its face. You know, I mean, it's sending up Capra, even as it plainly loves Capra, which I guess is what you got to be.
If that is the ultimate point, it's a little too subtle for its own good in the end. Like it probably needs to underline the irony a little bit more, I think, to sell it. Like there are things. I don't know. Like, these are like more individualized gags, but I think of broad goofy comedies that have something kind of like this at the end. Like, say, Dodgeball has an entire arc for Steve the Pirate, where he learns that being an adult pirate is not the way to go, and goes through a whole change and shows up at the end after they already won the tournament, and Vaughn and the rest of them just kind of bribe him back into being a pirate again. So like, what are we going to do with all this booty? And they show him like the cash prizes, just goes, oh, yar. And it's kind of like a parody of a character arc. Or my first one, my favorite comedy of all time, Dirty Work, where you have Chevy Chase's doctor character who's constantly in gambling debt throughout, is like the running gag with that character. And as Nordahl's doing the wrap up of all the supporting characters, and they're at the ending narration, he mentions, "Oh, and old Dr. Miller, well, he finally paid off his bookies, but they beat him to death anyway, so he's dead. Well, bye." And just like, and that is sort of such a pointed refutation of like, oh, and here's a character arc for this meaningless character, blah blah blah. And this movie could go with like a harder, I guess, sting on that if the gag is, and Norval Barnes took over the world despite being just as immoral as everybody he replaced and an idiot to boot.
I mean, it's sort of. Do you want to say that there's a capitalism is one of the targets of the satire here? I mean,
oh, absolutely,
it is, right? Is it baked into the narrative in a way that makes sense though? Like, or is it just sort of like, big rich people, they're bad, capitalism bad, or is there more to it? I'm kind of two minds on this.
I don't know. I mean, look, if the point of this is supposed to be capitalism bad, and by implication, I guess communism good or whatever as an alternative, like that doesn't land. It feels very half-assed in that regard. Yeah. It's more. I think the satire is more about the mechanics of capitalism and the bureaucracy built up around it, like the way it functions, rather than the overarching, I don't know, moral degradation that capitalism represents or whatever.
I really like how jumping out the tallest window in HUDSUCKER Tower is kind of just a job hazard for the rich men and the board.
Yes.
Like it just sort of, it will, it sort of eats at your soul so much that eventually, they got to put in anti-shatter glass to stop people from just flinging themselves out the window. That's funny. That is a good satirical idea. I think that is kind of what the movie is at its best doing. I'll
give you that one. I'll give the Coens that one. That's that is good. I mean, like I said, there's some good gags in here. I mean, look, the gag of him holding up the circle as his blueprint for his grand idea and saying, for kids, that's perfect. That's a great gag, and especially when he's showing it to Musburger and turns it like over on its side because he thinks, I was holding it upside down. Let me flip it over for you. This is just a fucking circle. That's sort of perfectly executed Mr. Show stuff, I guess.
This is again, this is sort of Mr. Show stuff. A lot of this, the capitalism causing you to jump out the window is sort of like the basketball talent scouts sketch a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Oh yeah, if you don't watch out, you're gonna shoot yourself eventually.
Yeah, and all the best gags in this are incredibly big, broad, silly gags.
Yes.
Like I think my favorite gag is the double stitched pants thing, which just stops the movie cold, but it's so funny.
I don't know. That one doesn't work for me.
It's so good. I gave him double stitch. Why not? Mr. Mospoco, a nice guy.
I suppose
Italian
that's another.
stereotype is really good too.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to work in more Wario references into this movie now, but
it doesn't need to come up
gonna
in every
resist.
code.
No, John Polito's in here very briefly, but that's it. No, I that gag I think works best as a sort of microcosm of what I was talking about. It's sort of as above, so below, and it's the guy saying, "Oh, that Mr. Musburger, he's such a nice man. I give him the extra stitch." Except we see he is absolutely not a nice man. He's not polite to this guy at all.
He's pointedly cruel to the tailor.
Yes. And it's people getting the benefit. The capitalists, I guess, get all the benefits of having gone through this Frank Capra without actually doing any of the nice things.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's clearly a lot of thought in this movie. There's a lot of intentionality.
Oh, sure. There's enough effort on the screen. I'll give them that.
There's an enormous amount of effort on screen in this film. It is, I think for me, it finally landed this go through. I thought it was really funny is what that was. And that's because I kind of started to view everything as a joke, even stuff that like just plainly doesn't work. Like the dream ballet in the middle of this.
Yes.
Like what does that achieve? Nothing.
But that is weird because, like I said, because it's obvious from the first time you watch this movie that everything's a joke.
Right.
But it's just you started viewing it as a different sort of joke that I guess works better. Yeah, I mean that's
broader. I mean, it's got more, like it's got Marty Feldman and Young Frankenstein moments in it than I realized. It's just overtly world-breaking comedy bits happen all the time in this, and that's ultimately just kind of part of the world. And it is doing the thing those movies do, which is like, here is a real story with characters that have plot functions and arcs and do things. And whether they fill the roles as intended or sort of, in a slant fashion is kind of the whole point. But they do ultimately fill a role. Sidney Musburger is Paul Newman kind of not really winking at the camera and he's just doing Old Man Potter. And it's kind of great that they got him in there. He brings an enormous amount of gravitas to it. But that character's played perfectly straight.
Yes, and he should be, I think. This is the type of movie where the villain should be the straightest role in some of these. I do think, the initial scuttlebutt was that they wanted Clint Eastwood for this role. And you understand why he wouldn't do that. But the version would be a better version than Paul Newman.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny to see either of them doing it. They're screen legends. I'm pretty amused by Paul Newman taking this role.
I think the contrast of Eastwood, he's so much grumpier inherently. That contrast with Barnes would be better.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. As straight as Newman's playing it, I don't really buy that he believes any of this stuff. I think maybe just knowing him as a more cuddly guy. This is not the type of villain I buy him as. I think he's got more mixed feelings on capitalism, for example.
Sure.
I'm sure he cashes all the checks for Bush and Sundance and Cool Hand Luke and everything else. But,
we're talking about Newman's own, though. This is he's an activist in his way. He's he's got. Well, I don't think he. I don't know what he has to say about capitalism. That's not really his focus. But
I guess I'd say this is a role for a Hollywood right winger. I think is what would work better.
I mean, Charlton Heston probably would have nailed it. Sure,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, he would have killed.
But he was busy in 1994 being in True Lies for no reason.
God, Charlton Heston would have been amazing in this. That's a rare role. I'd be like, I wish Charlton Heston had played that instead of Paul Newman.
Yeah. I just think Eastwood's contempt would come off as more authentic.
That's for sure.
Probably because he would genuinely dislike Tim Robbins.
Apparently, they considered Bruce Campbell for Musburger.
For Musburger?
Yeah, a little odd. And he kind of took himself out of the running, apparently, which I guess he does a lot. But I mean, honestly, I would have put him as Norval Barnes before Musburger, but that's what they were thinking.
That's where I thought that sentence was ending as you were talking. But yeah, I actually, now I think I could see him as Musburger. It would be quite a different role. The villain would not be the most grounded role in that version of the movie at all. But
he'd be the presumed son of Hudsucker, that is that loses his position.
Yes. But he would be over the top, like in a much bigger way. He'd probably be chomping a cigar in both hands.
He'd have to be. He's Bruce Campbell. Yes, not a guy you hire for subtlety.
Yeah, but I think Newman almost like splits the difference between that and the Eastwood version of actual dripping contempt versus the big cartoony, Looney Tunes villain. And then Newman lands somewhere in the middle. So this is my thing. Like, I don't think Newman or Robbins or Lee are doing bad work at all. I just don't know that any of them are the best choices for these roles. I think
Jennifer Jason Leigh. Come on.
Yeah. Come on. I think she pulls it off the best of anybody. And she's definitely giving it her all. Again, comparing this to Raising Arizona, it's just like, this is a character that's not as likable as Ed. As Holly Hunter.
Sure. I mean, Holly Hunter as Ed is warmth personified. This is a brassy career lady, a Pulitzer winning newspaper lady, from 19, this is Lois Lane archetypes.
Yes.
The entire point of this character is that her heart warms to the rube,
Yes.
Which is tough in this case because it's Tim Robbins as Norval Barnes,
right.
But she pulls that off, I think. As a comic performance, this is my favorite in the film. I think she's amazing.
I think she's given the most to work with.
Probably.
Just in terms of like sheer verbiage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the rat-a-tat style delivery of all the newspaper room scenes is like to the point where you can't even understand it. I had to rewind those scenes a few times. They are dense, and the joke seems to be how much they're saying and how fast. There's runs that John Mahoney goes on in those that they're like virtuoso breath performances, essentially. Like what he's actually saying and the speed with which he's getting it out and the direction he's placing it, that's technically difficult. Like it's really hard to do just on the amount of breath equals this amount of words kind of way of handling it. And he kind of nails those. Of course, it's easier when you get takes, but even still, everyone in those scenes it's the most satirical the performances get, the most stylized and the broadest. And I think that's why it works for me the most.
Here's another thing I think, about these characters and why this maybe doesn't work that way for me is I feel like these broad comic types are recognizable to me, and now I have seen versions of them on like TV sitcoms that ultimately worked better for me than the movie versions did. So, for example, like I guess just take a random Thursday night in 2009 on NBC, and you've got 30 Rock with Jack Donaghy or any of his corporate rivals of the week, and Kenneth the Page kind of doing a Norval Barnes thing. Eventually they definitely do an arc there where Kenneth runs the network for a while.
I feel like they've done like 3 versions of HUDSUCKER Proxy on that show.
Yeah, of course. And those are funnier versions of this character. They have more to work with. And then with Jason Lee, it's very specifically, I was thinking of the I don't know, Howard Hawks, whatever girl, the rat-a-tat. His Girl Friday thing. Paget Brewster did a version of that on BoJack Horseman. That is ultimately funnier and more successful than the Archer character in this movie for me. Even though she is a warthog in a wedding dress, I believe, the entire time.
That's a very funny character, yes. But I mean, that's kind of doing the same thing 30 years later too. It's
it's had more time to build on it, I suppose, and it got to me first, even though I must have seen HUDSUCKER before that, but didn't pay much attention to it.
I mean, I imagine that performance is in debt to this one. I think would be my guess.
Probably, but I think it's more apt to say that it's in debt to Rosalind Russell or whoever.
Right. Paget Brewster is really good at that. Have you ever heard?
She's incredible.
It's the Thrilling Adventure Hour podcast.
It's the best thing.
Yeah.
her doing that, her and Paul F. Tompkins doing the Thin Man
It's
riff
so
that
funny.
they do on
Yeah.
that. They
Really
have
great.
things. They can just give her individual words to say in like a really exaggerated mid-Atlantic accent that just become funny. It's like, "Ooh, Sasquatch,"
Yeah.
and it just kills me. And I develop as that's a big cartoony thing, and I develop so much more affection for that character, even though it's audio only. I never see her in person, and it's in these small bits, and it's even more cartoony than this. And yet somehow I end up loving that character in a way that I don't love the Archer character. And I don't know what exactly that goes down to.
You're making a good point here.
Yeah, maybe my point is that Paget Brewster should have been in everything for like a 20-year stretch, and it's kind of a crime how underused she was. But
Yeah.
that's not really to say Jennifer Jason Leigh is bad here. And I do think she's an interesting actor.
The Muncie Eagles marching band performance, that's so funny. That's such good stuff. That's all her just being funny. This is one of the better female roles in Coen's. I kind of think. I mean, there's obvious outliers, but like, this is like,
yeah. I mean, we'll get to Fargo in a week or two, but
right.
But also, yeah, it does totally sell her out in the finale. That she sells out all of her principles and accomplishments to date this rube for no fucking reason. But the thing I find interesting about
satire.
Yeah,
it's a triumphant ending. Is the point? It's like everyone's happy and it's all sort of fucked. Is sort of the way this ends.
That is, like you said, that's the best way of looking at it. The thing I wanted to get that I was thinking about with Jennifer Jason Leigh is that she seems to have really good taste in terms of like working with a lot of the most interesting talents around.
Yeah,
but also seems to have a knack for landing in their lesser works.
This is true.
Like she's in Paul Verhoeven's most difficult and least successful English language movie, which like Flesh and Blood. Very brave performance by her, but definitely not one of his better movies. And HUDSUCKER, likewise, considered kind of a misfire by most Coen fans. And I think she's really great in Hateful Eight and
Oscar
in the most recent season of Fargo too, which you talked about. But I would say that's one of the lesser seasons. And I wouldn't put Hateful Eight in the top half of Tarantino's filmography.
I would, but I know I'm in the wrong on that. I'm aware that I'm incorrect in this opinion, but she's wonderful in it. I mean, she
picks all the right people to work with, and then doesn't get the best of out of them. It feels
she's in some of the lesser Cronenberg films too. Yeah, she's I know. She get Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I suppose. One of the best Amy Heckerling film, I guess.
There's people who I think maybe even the majority would say Clueless or a plurality at least.
Or Wayne, right, okay.
That's just a generational divide. I think there's like a hard cutoff of if you were born after like 1979, then it's Clueless as your Heckerling of choice.
Fast Times is no slouch, though. It's not.
No, of course.
It's a defining generational. Yeah,
but Clueless is too for the following generation.
Right. She's always great, though. I love her. She's fantastic. It was fun to see her get a prominent role in a Coen's film. This is, again, a film I don't have much relationship with going in, so I was like, oh, look at all this Jennifer Jason Leigh. This is great. And she's really going forward. I think it's my favorite performance in the film. Yeah. And I
put it second to Peter Gallagher's eyebrows, but
God, does he look like Harry Connick Jr. in this?
Oh, man.
He's what an odd cameo.
Yes.
There's a lot of good cameos in this. Goodman as the radio announcer. Buscemi as the hipster juice bartender.
Of course. Polito as the account.
As John Polito.
Yes.
Could have used more, frankly.
The one that I loved is at that ball right before Peter Gallagher goes on stage, the Texan stockholder that scolds him, Barnes, is like, will show up as the sheriff that Tommy Lee Jones talks to towards the end of No Country for Old Men.
Is it Barry Corbin? Is it?
No, not that guy. Before that, he's just like they're sitting in a diner booth going over like after leaving the crime scene where there's I'm not going to spoil too much there, but he's got a very distinctive delivery. Where it's the dismal tide.
Oh yes, okay, I remember it now. Yeah, Bill Cobbs as Moses.
Yes, he's good in a strange role.
Okay, this is a crazy role. This is kind of the film being the most overtly spoofish, I would say. This is kind of like, okay, is this an example of the magical Negro trope or a satire of it before it was even really codified? I think it's the latter. I think it is the latter, I believe. Because if you watch enough of these movies and enough old movies, you know this character.
Yeah.
And
I think he was recognizable at the time. I don't know when that term was really coined and how like prevalent it was at this time.
this is like almost a decade before the Green Mile, which is kind of, I think, when it really became like a thing.
It's hard to say that anything in this movie is not entirely knowing.
Right.
You know, like...
Yeah. Like, they know what they're doing here, obviously.
Yeah. He's obviously not being played straight in any way.
Yeah. The nature of his magic is very, it's nonsensical, essentially. It's magical realism, where they're just like, whatever. He can stop time by sticking his broom in the gears of the clock tower. And... then he knows exactly when to do it, and then he's got to fight the devil. They're having so much fun with this guy. They've got the set they've got him on. It looks like Gotham City, essentially. It's all gears and shadows and stairways, and I love the implication that that Amy Archer just knows him. That she's just familiar with this guy.
He knows her. I don't get the sense that she knows him. That's the way. Okay. The scene where she goes and she's poking around the gears of the clock tower there, this is akin to the plumbing of the universe we've talked about in other Coen movies.
Yeah.
These gears can actually stop the flow of time. This is the secret, the forbidden knowledge of the strings being pulled behind the scenes. She's trying to peek behind the curtain, and she finds him there. And he just explains the plot of the movie to her, like the evil plot to use Norville to drive down the stock price in a way that strikes me as weirder than having him pull the literal Deus Ex Machina and stop time at the end of the movie. I guess because like the tone is so goofy that the Deus Ex Machina just kind of plays as, okay, we're fully in cartoons now. But in the earlier case here, it seems so unnecessary. Like she could figure out the stock manipulation plot without divine intervention.
Well, he is omniscient. He's the narrator. We know that from the opening. He tells the story. He sees everything.
Yes, of course.
And has the sort of the God view of the unfoldings. And maybe he is God. Honestly, it's not entirely clear. So I don't mind that, and I like the way those scenes play out because they're so it's so explicitly doing this character type in a satirical way. It's funny. I don't know if it's necessary, but I like it. I think it is necessary if you're going to end the movie this way. And I like the end.
Yeah, I guess I like the end. I don't know.
I mean, it leans very heavily on this guy being God or something like that for it to make sense at all. And, he can't just do that if we never see him and just hear him narrating.
Yeah.
Or maybe he can. It doesn't matter. Who knows? But I think that's what they're setting up with him.
Yeah, he's the angel from It's a Wonderful Life in a certain sense too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Although I guess Durning kind of becomes that also.
Yeah, which I love that. That's great. He shows up with wings and a halo playing a harp. It's fantastic.
Yeah, the halo is a spinning hula hoop too. And yeah, just in the way he's like correcting him Norville as he's reading the letter and mispronouncing fail and fall. He's correct you every time. Not Durning such a treasure. But of course, you could do a version of that finale even without slow Moses, without stopping time. Like you could just go out on the ledge and find the blue letter in the pocket of the apron he put on.
That's true.
And go back in. And that would be a non-supernatural way of resolving this plot in the exact same way. It would be simpler. You could even have the Durning angel show up and just talk to him while he's standing on the ledge instead of dangling in the air 30 feet above the ground.
That's true. And I guess it would still, kind of bring us back around to the beginning and the opening suicide, which, that's the whole, it's a circle.
It's a circle you see. Yes. And the clock is a circle and everything's a circle.
Yeah.
Yes. No, these are obviously very deliberate choices.
Right.
To layer like multiple, not just like one layer of supernatural unreality onto it, but there's a magical Negro and a Durning angel.
Mm-hmm. And the devil, or whatever this guy is,
Yes.
the other
well, I think the word you're looking for is nemesis.
Sure, yes.
I didn't think that would be in this movie at all. And even in their movies where it's not in it, it still finds a way to kind of be.
Yeah, I mean, this is just sort of. I mean, they are metaphysical forces essentially.
Mhm.
It's sort of I don't know, the random and the purpose or whatever, kind of clashing using and I don't know. You could say, kind of, it's just sort of an eternal struggle playing itself out through these people. I guess
the eternal struggle
Yeah.
between Mop and Denture.
That's the stuff that is so like outlandish to me that it has to be a parody film, that exists in there, because this is not. I don't know. I guess when you've got the angels and It's a Wonderful Life, you can kind of do have license to do that and be serious, which I guess is the confusion about this film forever, right? It's just sort of like how serious is this? How much is this tongue in cheek? Pretty tongue in cheek, but fully, I don't know.
But I think that's the wrong framing of the question. It's because
Right.
It's so clearly not serious. I think the question, it's more like, how much are we supposed to like Norval Barnes and Amy Archer?
Right. That I guess is the main question. I like Amy Archer just fine. Norval Barnes, I mean, they've done work to make him less likable.
Yes. Well, and I end up liking her less because of that. In the way
She accepts him.
Yes. This is a problem I associate specifically with Mike Schur sitcoms. And that they love to pair up a very capable, intelligent woman with an absolute drooling idiot of a man-child as a romantic pairing. And then I wind up thinking less of the adult woman part of that.
Right.
Of like, why that you can't actually be married to Andy Dwyer. Like that is, he has the brain of a child. It's like you married Lenny from Of Mice and Men.
That's very good. I mean, that's true. Aaron kind of had a childlike. Okay, none of it worked with Andy. It's
right.
They tried a lot of stuff, and none of it stuck.
To a lesser extent in like Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Sandberg's character and whatnot, but it's still there. And
Adam Sandler movies all the time do this. Yeah. The Water Boy. You can't write a romantic plot for The Water Boy and have it be remotely serious. I mean, they kind of know that, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I guess, you know what? You're kind of convincing me again, I think. Yeah, they needed this guy to be an actual Capra protagonist.
Or at least like present that way initially and then turn it on its head as it goes or something. But
to greater effect. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter that he turns into an asshole for a small portion of the film. Like, it's kind of just erased, We get over it. I don't think,
would the satire be worse if he made a friend in the mailroom and made promises that he was going to make changes in the mailroom to like make their lives better when he made it big, and then reneges on those promises, and then comes at the end and
then that guy's important later, and he helps him out at a crucial moment, kind of like that's Capra shit. That would work. I mean,
even if he doesn't follow through, maybe that's a better satirical point. If he doesn't follow through with that, even at the end when he gets his happy ending, but that's part of his evil turn to when he's Dark Spider-Man dancing in the suit in the middle of the movie, ignoring the mailroom's request for another shovelful of coal or whatever it is.
Well, maybe go one further and just cut the part where he turns bad, right? I mean,
I like that. I mean, one of my favorite things about this is how what of a shithead he is.
It is funny. I guess that's the thing that you put in if it is this satirical version of it, and if you take that out, then it is straight up George Bailey and or Mr. Smith or Mr. Deeds or whichever Jimmy Stewart character you want it to be. Without that sort of turn in him, well, I don't know. It feels like it can be kind of removed piecemeal from the narrative, and it wouldn't change anything. Just that sequence of events, you once they move beyond it, everyone's beyond it. Once he turns into a nice guy again. I mean, really the worst we see him behaving is to Buzz, the elevator boy, who we hate, or at least
we do.
He's an insufferable presence under any circumstances.
It occurred to me that the scene where he fires Buzz and Buzz gets down on the floor is begging for his job is not entirely that different of a scene from Totoro begging for his life in the woods.
Kind of, yeah.
Crossing, and yet as much as Bernie Birnbaum is a completely unlikable and irredeemable character in every facet sense, I am so much more sympathetic to him than I am like, no, you were bad at your elevator job. You should be fired.
That's the thing. Like, like you don't feel too bad for Buzz, even when he is at his lowest. It's just sort of pathetic in that Bernie Birnbaum way.
Yeah. But I think what we keep circling around here in different ways, and maybe like my sort of final thought on this movie is that for everything I do like that this movie does, there are better versions of it that I have seen and do. That not just that the Turturro scene is a better version of that begging for your life scene.
Right.
It's like the madcap Coen comedy has been done better in Raising Arizona already, and the the Norval Barnes character, the wide-eyed hick coming to make it big in the city, it might be done better by Kenneth Parcell, and the Paget Brewster might have done the throwback Rosalind Russell character better. But also like the satirical like bureaucracy dystopian elements of Hudsucker Industries are done better by Brazil.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it reminds you of Brazil. It almost intentionally, I feel like it's, a little odd. I mean, just all the sets and stuff feels, I don't know. That's actually something I love about this film is all the design elements, but you can see the inspirations, and it's not all Preston Sturgis. It's
and the secret satire stuff's been done better by Verhoeven. Like these are like I said, everything here is like, yeah, that's I don't know. It's kind of a jack of several trades, but it doesn't really knock any of them out of the park. Is where I come out on it.
Yeah. You know what? I came in warmer on this than I thought I was going to be, and I think you brought me down to earth a little bit.
Damn it!
No, I still like this. I think it's really fun, but yeah, there's stuff in it that I can't really can't defend fully. I do think it's a pretty entertaining movie. It looks great. Nobody's bad in this. I think every performance works. There might be better versions of, but I do enjoy everyone in it, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, I'm quite taken with in this, and John Mahoney and Bruce Campbell in the newspaper room are fun too. I think it's kind of essential Coens in a way. I mean, they're all kind of essential, is what I'm realizing. Yeah,
I don't know that there are any you can cut out, but this is. I mean, it's. Certainly, if you have to pare things down at all, it's going to be one of the first on the chopping block. And like you said, because of that, I agree. Jennifer Jason Leigh, MVP, and because of all this stuff about it, kind of ends up living gag to gag a lot more than their more successful comedies do. Raising Arizona, for example, perfect example of a comedy where the gag stuff is very strong, and yet it's tied together so elegantly that it does wind up being more than the sum of those gags.
Yeah, there's a cumulative power to Raising Arizona. I think undeniable in a way. This doesn't really have that.
No, it's just got individual gags. So it's funny that Goatherd is listed in the wanted section of the paper. He's like that, and it requires experience. And it's very funny that the guy's shouting his orientation to him as they're going through like this steam blasting mailroom, and he's runs off. Yeah. 8005671 is your personnel number. It will not be repeated. It's like what? Why? It takes just as much time to tell him it will not be repeated as it would to repeat it. Like it's not even. I mean, that's one of the stronger, I guess, Brazil gags. But
I mean, look, I think there's stuff here, and I'm saying the same thing I've been saying the whole episode. It works for me in a lot of ways, and I'm appreciative of it. It's probably not a classic or a masterpiece or anything like that. It is got a bit of a cult following now, and I guess I'm part of that now. It's fun. It's not a lot of films like this, and I would say of the aping the tropes of screwball comedies, there's probably no one as committed, no film as intense in its appreciation and understanding of them and the way it's subverting them. I think there's better versions of screwball comedies that have been made, but when it comes to actually looking at the tropes and spoofing them, this one is. I mean, I don't know. Is this damning it with faint praise at this point? I actually think this is very impressive.
Yeah, I think it's starting to. But no, it's
okay.
Look, it's hard. the Coen brothers set a standard for themselves that it's hard for this one to live up to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it comes down to.
True enough. All right. Fargo's the next one.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good.
Pretty good, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, that's one I haven't watched in 20 years at least. So
really?
I actually sat down and watched. I don't know. Did I watch it around when the Fargo TV series premiered? Maybe. But that would be 10 years ago now.
It's really good, man. You know that. Okay.
Yeah,
that's the next one we're going to talk about for the Coen-Oscopy. So look forward to that. And I am, that's for sure. It's a great film.
But that's another story altogether.
I was just speculating about a hypothesis. I know I don't know nothing.
Uncertainty. That is appropriate for matters of this world.
There, where the tie's back. Where the tie's back.